Hey there, this is Steve Stout. I'm coming to you today with AudioScape, and we thought it would be fun to have the challenge of writing and recording a song on the spot using just the AudioScape Opto Compressor. I'm running this on all sources and mostly running a 1073 style preamp in front, just to give you kind of like a reference, just something super standard, but in varying degrees of, hitting the compressor a little bit or, really leaning in on certain tracks. I wanted to talk about why I feel like the Opto style compressor could be a great first compressor for your studio in the terms of hardware compressors. This is my first hardware compressor in my studio here, and I think optical style compressors are great because it definitely is a more transparent type of compression, and it's not so crazy that for people like me who I record all my stuff on my own here, if I'm going and playing drums or something and I can't necessarily see the meter all the time, I feel like I can kind of hear what it's doing, and I'm not too afraid of getting into too much trouble as far as over compressing, or if I am, it's pretty obvious while you're playing and tracking. So I thought that this would be a good fit for my studio to just bring some extra warmth and control to all of my sources on the way in. And I just think it's really one of the best options to put on pretty much any instrument. I don't think that there's a situation where if I had it on a certain track, I would, be too bummed out about it. So I've got some examples here. This song started out with my old Hummingbird guitar. I just kind of had some cool little riffs I came up with over G and F that are arpeggiated, and I'm using this Soyuz 017 mic, and between that and the compressor, there's just so much you can play nice and soft. And honestly, that guitar is pretty quiet. It's not like the loudest guitar. The strings are really old, but it's got so much vibe that to just be able to bring up all of the kind of more nuancy stuff with the compressor, it was so fun to play it really light. And I'm actually dialing out with my EQ a little bit of the high end before I hit the compressor so that it's not quite so, super duper shiny. And then just using the compressor to really kind of control it and let it be kind of buttery, and I doubled it so it's on the sides. And I've got a little example of before and after I put the Opto Comp in the insert of my preamp. So we'll play that now. So on the drums, I've got a bit of, I have definitely some mics going on the kit. I'm running 3 overheads, like a stereo and mono combination that I've seen a lot of people do. And so to me, the place I was most excited to try out this style of compression was on my mono ribbon overhead. I'm leaning in pretty hard on this one. And again, I kind of just said it. I went and played drums. It sounded good in the in-ears, and I just went with it. And then it was funny to go back and watch the, the footage of the needle moving, because I was cooking pretty hot with it. But if you mute it versus unmuting it, you realize really fast that one mic is really all of the excitement of the whole kit. And it's nice that it's down the middle so that it's really bringing up the snare and the weight of the snare. And then I feel like all of the cymbal bloom, all of that Ringo kind of cymbal bloom is definitely more down the middle, but there's enough stereo stuff happening with the stereo overhead that's not compressed to still have that image, but it keeps just a cool vintage feel. And I like that retains as the focus down the middle of the track. So I was super stoked about how that sounded on that mic. For bass, I'm just recording my old 78 Music Master Fender bass. It's got flat wounds, and I always record bass through a guitar amp pretty much. I don't know why I started. I think I watched like a Dr. Dog video and heard that they did that, and I tried it and I haven't turned back. So I don't take a DI at all. I just go through a guitar amp. And lately it's been the Vox hand-wired AC15 I have. Feels like a good balance of like the low end is big enough with the cabinet size, and then there's still some really cool like kind of high-end cut. And I like that it allows me to like get that bass to sit above the kick. I pretty much always have the bass over the kick, and I'm kind of focusing on like that 100-ish area for that to, you know, kind of be like almost the attack of what the kick would be, because my kicks are pretty mellow. I don't love like a super clicky kick. So the click is kind of coming from the bass, and I used a pick on this one. So I'm hitting the, you know, that's the bass through, you know, an optical compressor is such a classic go-to for people. I feel like that's one of the first things that they would tell you to use it for. So, you know, it's a no-brainer that it sounds great in this situation. And it's cool to be able to, you know, tweak that HF, like high frequency knob a little bit, because you can kind of decide what part of the bass sound you're really compressing. And I think I might have messed with it on this, where I'm not just trying to like have all of the low end consume the compressor. I'm kind of trying to let a little bit through and then have the compressor clamp down more on like the attack of the bass. And that just seemed to like sound really good to me. I do a similar thing on my mix bus a lot with compressors, where I'll, you know, let 100 and below through, and then I'll go to like 40% and just hit like a couple dB. And sometimes I'll do that with like a few in a row. So depending on like the color they're giving me. So I feel like that's a really cool tool to have like an easy access to on the front there. For this main electric guitar part, if I had a bunch of different compressor options, even in hardware format, sometimes, you know, I might go for a quick compressor just to really make sure that that attack gets through, because certain slower compressors can almost feel like you're kind of like the pick attack is getting a little smushy in a weird way if you get a little too kind of like, you know, slow and tubey with it. But that being said, I feel like this specific iteration of an optical compressor, obviously we all know kind of like the zone of what these are. I've played other LA2A style compressors and they've been a little too slow, and I've switched to something else for an electric guitar. But for this, it just felt like it was doing all of the things of like, you know, we played through tube amps for a reason, so it was cool to just like put even some more tubes after, and it didn't sound like it was smushing the attack at all. If anything, I think for me, it felt like I could actually turn the guitar volume down and really like fine tune like how much brightness was on. And like, I'm actually running through, I think like a really slow vibrato and a phaser, and a delay. And I don't know if that reverb's actually on, but just like to really be able to get into that nuance. And like, I think I had the tone on that Jazzmaster down at like 4 maybe, but it's nice to be able to start to turn that volume down on the guitar and the guitar not just disappear, you know? And I feel like compression is like the right compressor is a really good, you know, helpful assistant to be able to just keep that guitar up and competing with like the vocal or other things like that. So this was definitely something I will be doing again, and using on electric guitars, because I don't think I'd be hard pressed to find a situation where I'd really feel like I over compressed it through this, you know, Opto Comp. I think that I could always, you know, dial that HF knob back a little bit, or, you know, just make sure I'm only just kind of tapping it. But I think I was hitting it pretty aggressive on this, and it sounded great to me. It was super inspiring to play, you know, in the ears. So definitely like it on electric guitar. So the thing I was probably most excited for this compressor to try it on was obviously lead vocals. I have a vocal chain that I've liked here, and I've been recording it just straight out of the preamp. And it sounds great. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to get as much kind of weight and inspiring, sound out of what I have here. I'm running the Soyuz 017 tube mic, and I'm actually running it into their Launcher Deluxe, which is just like more mic transformers. And then I'm running that into a 1073 clone. So between those things, like there's a lot of transformers already happening. But that being said, it was pretty night and day, just even like hitting the insert button and adding in the Opto Comp, because all of a sudden it's like, I feel like some of the things that I've run into as like issues is like, I'm always just like cranking the preamp almost as hot as I can get it to come into my interface to just get any kind of like weight or any type of like warmth. And then I'll use a plug-in compressor and I'll have it on while I track all the time, every time. And usually it is like an LA2A style compressor that I'm using. The only pitfalls I've run into with that are it's really easy to come into the interface too hot because you're just like trying to find that weight, and it's hard to fight volume on that. And then you start clipping vocals without really wanting to. And also, like, sometimes I found like with like some, pop sessions or like bigger, denser sessions, which a lot of times the last things you come in and do again are vocals, throwing a plugin on while you're tracking is honestly led me to times where there are clicks and pops and things. And then a mastering engineer is pointing it out and I'm like, oh, nuts. Like, I wish I had just like had a hardware compressor to just print through and like had, because for some reason I feel like when you have a plugin on the track, you're actually tracking, you have a higher risk of some of those artifacts happening. So my goal is always to have like the least amount of plugins on a session I can. I love them and I'll use them, to the nth degree like everybody else. But like, if it just sounds good already, I'm not going to argue with it. And I'd so much rather hear, the best case scenario of that compression and, in the headphones to inspire like the performance and stuff. And I feel like today, like the session that I ran was super seamless, not like a single hiccup. And it's rad that like I would usually put like a ton more parts on this, and I might add like a keyboard part or like maybe a little lead guitar part. But it's cool that it just already kind of sounds done. And that's like what I think we're all really looking for. Nobody wants to have to do 100 tracks on their song just to, make it feel like it sounds professional or completed. So I think it's really fun to like, feel inspired in the headphones while you're recording and just get it down then. And then be like, oh, wow, this song, like, cool. One day the song sounds done. Like, maybe the song's done. And I think that's what I'm always chasing. And I think that it's awesome to use these boxes, obviously, like as a mixing tool afterwards. But my main thing is I'll just compress on the way in and just commit to that. And, maybe I'll use plugins on like a mix bus or something. But I like to just kind of like decide what the colors are going to be, come in, and there it is, like it's just done. And I feel like for a workflow thing for me, and there's just so many reasons that I feel like it, is helpful. I think if I, am tracking vocals with the compressor in a plugin kind of approach, a lot of times it would take 2, maybe even 3 to get like a similar weight of what I feel like I can get out of the AudioScape Opto Comp. And then still, I think I start fighting harshness faster. Like, I feel like today these vocals all sound like they really will compete in the mix. And like, a lot of times, yeah, I'll print a hardware compressor and compress a little bit more. We all do it. But I like to try to get about as close to something that really feels like it can just function in the mix without doing that, because then I feel like the S's aren't as bad and the harshness is kind of more tamed, because you just want that like buttery vocal that can just sit on top of the mix and not be, S's jumping out all over the place. So that's like the first thing I'm always looking for in a vocal. And I feel like today it was just like so nice to sing. And, I print through a couple of tape echoes in stereo and on each individual vocal track. I doubled the lead vocal, and there's a harmony that I doubled, and they all are going through a stereo set of tape delays, which again, you know, hitting the hardware compressor, already sounding smooth, already sounding level, and then that going out to those echo units and coming back in, you know, maybe more consistent or more pleasant, is super helpful versus like going and adding that compression later and then it's sounding all pretty, but your echoes were printed kind of harsh, or you have to go back and reprint them. Like, it's so nice that like it's all just done. You know, it's like cool vintage sounding, warm vocal, all the compression you could need, and then, you know, you can kind of go out through whatever other stuff that you want to downstream from that, and it's gonna, you know, yield probably the best result. So it's too late, they're already gone. I guess they found what they're looking for. Take a breath, take anything. We'll never be the ones they adore. They caught a glimpse, caught everything. They'll be turning us in before dawn. Yeah, super stoked. So yeah, I feel like the Opto Compressor as a first studio hardware compressor is a super good idea. I don't think it will get you in that situation where, you know, a lot of people talk about when you first start getting gear as like, you know, your first mic, and then you feel like, oh, I need some different mics because it sounds like it's overlapping and the frequencies are all building up. I don't think that the Opto Comp will get you into that situation. I think that it's just going to add, you know, color, weight, and like bloom to your tracks, and I feel like it really stacks up well, and it made me today think less about having to switch the mics on different sources, and just it sounded super good no matter what mics I had up. And I feel like the track just sounds mixed already, and that's awesome. So thanks for checking out this song. Hopefully I have a name for it by the time we put this video out. I'll have to figure it out. But sweet. Thanks, guys.